Mega Victreebel is real, which means there's yet another original Pokemon that has been touched and altered in some way. And with Legends EA just around the corner with probably tons of more original Pokemon getting new Mega Forms, I started to wonder, what original Pokemon has not been touched since the beginning of Pokemon? No new evolutions, no regional forms, no design change, nothing. A Pokemon that was designed on day one and has remained that way for almost 30 years. Let's start with my first category to easily knock out a lot of altered Pokemon. What original Pokemon has received a Mega Evolution? Well, you have Venusaur, Charizard, who got 2 Megas, Blastoise, Beedrill, Pidgeot, Raichu, who also recently got 2 Megas, Alakazam, Victreebel, Slowbro, Gengar, Kangaskhan, Pinsir, Gyarados, Aerodactyl, Dragonite, and Mewtwo, who also got 2 Mega Forms as well. And then there's a few Pokemon that have been floating around online that supposedly got a Mega Evolution as well. So I'll go ahead and count those 2 because it seems to be pretty confirmed, which are Clefable and Starmie. That's already 18 out of the 151 Pokemon that have been altered in some way since the beginning. So I'm really curious to see how far we can take this. How about Gigantamax Forms? Well, out of all the original Pokemon, Butterfree, Pikachu, Machamp, Kingler, Lapras, Eevee, and Snorlax all received Gigantamax Forms in Pokemon Sword and Shield. So just right there, we have knocked out another 7 Pokemon on the list. How about regional forms? Well, you have Rattata, Raticate, Sandshrew, Sandslash, Vulpix, Ninetales, Diglett, Dugtrio, Meowth, Persian, Geodude, Graveler, Golem, Grimer, Muck, Executor, and Marowak, who all receive Alolan forms in Pokemon Sun and Moon. And then you have Ponyta, Rapidash, Slowpoke, Farfetch, Weezing, Mr. Mime, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, who all receive Galarian forms in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Growlithe, Arcanine, Voltorb, and Electrode all receive Hisuian forms in Legends Arceus. Tentacool and Tentacool got convergent forms in the Paldea region, which I'm going to count. And lastly, Tauros received 3 Paldean forms in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So just like that, we have nearly knocked out 40% of the original Pokemon who have been altered in some way. I really wonder if there will be any untouched Pokemon left over in this video. Let's do the next category. Pokemon with gender differences. In Generation 4, Game Freak introduced new designs for Pokemon of different genders. You have female Zubat and Golmet, which have smaller fangs. Female Gloom and Vileplume have bigger spots on their petals. Female Kadabra have smaller mustaches. Male Doduo and Dugtrio have black necks instead of beige necks. Female Hypno have longer collar fur. Female Rhyhorn and Rhydon have shorter horns. Female Goldeen and Seeking also have shorter horns. Female Scyther have larger abdomens. And female Magikarp have white whiskers instead of yellow whiskers. That puts us up to 70 Pokemon who have been altered in some way. So we're almost basically halfway through the original 151 Pokemon. Who else can we eliminate? Oh, what about Pokemon who had their type changed? You have Clefairy, Jigglypuff, and Wigglytuff who all went from being a normal type to the new Fairy type in Generation 6. And then Magnemite and Magneton who gained the Steel type in Generation 2. What else? How about Pokemon who gained an evolution? You have Paris who was given a pre-evolution but was scrapped in Generation 2. Weavile who's given a split evolution with a scrapped item Poison Stone in Generation 2 but was scrapped as well. And Ditto who was given a Steel type evolution but was scrapped in Generation 2 too. But if you don't think these should count, all these Pokemon fall in different categories anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And then you have the official Pokemon like Primeape who gained Annihilate by using Rage Fist 20 times in battle. Farfetch got Surfetch after landing 3 critical hits in one battle. Onix evolves into Steelix when traded with the Metal Coat. Execute can evolve into Alolan Executor with a Leaf Stone in the Alolan region. Cubone evolves into Alolan Marowak when leveled up at night in the Alolan region as well. Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan were given Tyrogue as a pre-evolution, evolving at level 20 based on his highest stat. Lickitung got Licky after leveling up with the move Rollout. Chansey got Blizzy by leveling up with High Friendship. Tangela evolves into Tangrowth after leveling up with the move Ancient Power. Seadra evolves into Kingdra when traded with the Dragon Scale. Electabuzz and Magmar both got baby forms through breeding. And lastly, Porygon got Porygon 2 when traded with the upgrade item. That is 93 Pokemon now that have been altered in some way since the very beginning, and we're almost in the hundreds now. I really wonder if there'll actually be any left at the end of this video. What about original Pokemon who had their design change? These might surprise you. Charmander originally had a spike on his back in his first design and back sprite, but it was removed in Generation 2, like you see right here. Wartortle's color shifted from blue to purple in Pokemon Emerald, but was changed back in Generation 5. Kakuna originally had arms in his Kitsugimori artwork and his red sprite, but they were removed in Pokemon Yellow. Ekans originally had multiple rings in the Kitsugimori artwork, which was even shown in the official Red and Blue Prima guide, but was changed to just one ring starting in Generation 2. Arbok has several different pattern designs on his belly and back depending on the game. It's gotten probably the most treatment to design changes. Oddish's color was changed from black to purple to avoid any racial stereotypes, since Evolution Blossom is based on a hula dancer, so it was changed in Generation 3. Same with Jinx, his color was changed from black to purple to avoid being seen as blackface in the West. Venomoth originally had spots on his wings wings and the colors of his shiny form and its Kishikomori artwork, which was also featured in the Prima guide as well, but was changed in red and blue for some reason. Coughing skull and crossbow design was placed above his face and then back below his face in the original game, so I count that as a design change as well. Vaporeon lost the fins on his hind legs in Pokemon Yellow. Flareon's fur color changes multiple times in several generations, from orange and white to orange and yellow to even beige. Dratini's color was changed from blue to purple in Generation 3, and then back again to blue in Generation 4. Mew's head was altered in the English version of red to look less like a fetus. And finally, some Pokemon literally lost a finger, because if you didn't know, in Japan, there's a gang called the Yakuza, and they cut off their finger as part of punishment or apology. So to avoid any controversy or affiliation with this gang, Game Freak decided to remove some fingers from the original Pokemon. So he had Poliwhirl, Poliwrath, Abra, Haunter, and Drowsy who went from having 4 fingers to just 3 to avoid any controversy. Or just mittens like poor Poliwhirl here. He lost all his fingers in the change. That is now 111 Pokemon out of the original 151 that have been touched in some way by Game Freak. Now we gotta dig deep for the Pokemon that have been touched in ways that you probably wouldn't think of. How about Pokemon that had their stat changed? And after looking into it, there's only 2 from the original 151. You have Nidoqueen and Nidoking. They both had their attack stats slightly raised in Generation 4, but their base stat totaled from 495 to 505. A very, very subtle change, but I'm going to count it. How about Pokemon who gained a signature move or ability? So Game Freak has specifically picked these Pokemon to give them something special and unique, which I'm counting as touched. You have Machop and Machoke who were given the signature move Vital Throw in Generation 2. Staryu was given Camouflage in Generation 3. Psyduck and Golduck were given the ability Cloud9 in Generation 3 and 4, which, keep in mind, did the exact same thing as Rayquaza's signature ability, which I'm going to count as an Omega change. And Shelter and Closure was given the Skill Link ability in Generation 4, weirdly enough. Alright, we are up to 120 Pokemon now. We gotta think more obscure. How about Pokemon who are given exclusive forms in the anime? Well, it turns out in the first movie, Mewtwo literally clones several Pokemon, and Bulbasaur 2 and Squirtle 2 have unique designs compared to their originals. So I'm gonna count that as touched. There's also an anime exclusive place called Pinken Island that grows a special fruit that changes Pokemon's fur to pink. And the Pokemon we see in the episode that was affected by this fruit are Caterpie, Weedle, Pidgey, Parasect, Venonat, Mankey, and Bellsprout. They all turn pink, so I'm gonna count that as touched as well. And lastly, there's a place called Valencia Island in the Orange Islands that has alternate colorations of certain Pokemon, which we see with Nidoran male and female, where the colors are more saturated and darker. We're up to 131 Pokemon now. How about Pokemon who had their shiny colors changed? Because all of the Pokemon got shiny forms, but there were some Pokemon that had their colors changed in later games, which I'm gonna count as touched. And all these changes happened between Generation 2 and 3, unsurprisingly enough. You had shiny Charmeleon, who went from being light orange to yellow. Metapod, who went from being brownish yellow to a red orange. Fearow, who went from being a greenish gray to a bright yellow color. Horsey, who went from being dark blue with purple fins to an ocean blue. Jolteon, who went from a metallic yellow to the notorious lime green. And lastly, Almanite and Almastar went from being gray to pink. And I actually prefer their gray shiny colorations. They look pretty epic and ancient with those colors. But it was changed. All right, from here on out, I'm about to get very technical now. And if you don't agree with these next categories, then these are your final untouched Pokemon. You have 138 Pokemon out of the original 151 that have been touched, and these are the final ones untouched. But I think there's a strong case for the next categories in this video. So let's keep it going. We have spin-off exclusive forms. Yes, so in Pokemon Go, a lot of costumes are given out to Pokemon, and you can't take the costume off. So I'm counting it as a form of the Pokemon. And Ivysaur in Pokemon Go was given a red Partyette form for multiple Pokemon days and anniversaries dating back to 2020. And then you also have Nidorino, who also got the red Partyette form in Pokemon Go. And this one can't even evolve, which makes it even more unique than the Ivysaur. So I'm definitely going to count this one as well. And then the only other spin-off games that I can think of that have a different form of the original Pokemon are the GameCube games with Pokemon Colosseum and Gale of Darkness. And no, I'm not going to count the Shadow Pokemon in Pokemon Go because all Pokemon were given Shadow forms. But if a Shadow form was changed for a Pokemon later down the road, then yes, I would count that. So in Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, Pidgeotto, Spearow, and Seal were all given Shadow forms that you found with various trainers in the game. Next up, trading card game exclusive forms. You have the Delta Species expansion, which according to its lore, Pokemon the Hoenn region became Delta Species after being exposed to waves emitted by the Hoenn Research Tower, which changed their signature typing to something completely different, types that fundamentally changed their identity. Like imagine a Charmander being a water type. It makes no sense. That's a fundamental change to everything. You have Nidorina, who became a metal type, which is basically the steel typing in the trading card game. Dugong became a colorless type, which is basically the normal type in the game. Kabuto and Kabutoss became lightning type, which is the electric typing in the game as well. And Dragonair became both lightning and grass types in 2 different cards. So it got special treatment 2 times, which I'm counting as touched. And now we're down to the final 3 Pokemon. We have Poliwag, Ghastly, and Krabby. Have these Pokemon ever been touched by Game Freak ever in the past 30 years? And I'm just gonna say right now, I was on the fence about 2 of these Pokemon being quote unquote touched. So at the end, I made one final category called minimally touched, where I'm putting both Poliwag and Ghastly. Because if you look closely at the designs, they do look a bit different in later games. Ghastly went from looking like a spray paint cloud in the original games to more of a Shadow Ball design we know today in Pokemon Yellow. And since Kishikamori originally drew it as a Shadow Ball, it makes deciding whether it was touched or not a bit challenging. But just looking at it directly right here, they look clearly different. It's like a spray paint cloud gas thing, and then just a Shadow Ball that came to life. So I'm gonna count that as minimally touched. And then there's Poliwag. The only thing I could find that was different about this Pokemon in the past 30 years is Spiral. In Generation 2, it was drawn with 2 evolutions instead of 3. Then it was changed back in Generation 4. That is literally it about this Pokemon. So I'm gonna place this one as well in the minimally touched category. So that means, in my opinion, the only Pokemon that has been untouched in nearly 30 years by Pokemon is Krabby. Nothing about it has ever been altered. It's the same color, it has the same shiny, the same number of limbs, still a pure water type. Its stats have never changed. All of its cards are the same type, no exclusive forms, no gender differences, nothing. It even has the same original cry from the original games and the modern games up to Scarlet and Violet. This Pokemon has never been touched ever by Game Freak. This is peak design. Krabby is the perfect Pokemon, and it's the only one that has remained untouched by Game Freak out of the original 151 Pokemon that I could find. Who would have thought? A crab.